So what I wanted to show today with Lexi's training session is we're still working on really getting straight and level on a small circle. But as we're going, Lexi was one who was very sensitive to rein pressure. And so we've been riding her mostly in the halter with the reins and just gave her a break from using the bit at all. And I put the bit back in her mouth because while we're still working on kind of using small circles in order to improve engagement, I decided to go ahead and start rebuilding a rein contact, at least the way I consider what I consider rein contact. So the way I was traditionally taught is that you kind of shorten the reins, plant your hands, and the horse lifts the back in order to alleviate the rein pressure. But lots of horses like Lexi sort of figure out a way around that. They end up bending the spine, twisting the spine, dropping the back, contorting the neck, all to get away from the pressure in their mouth without actually ever lifting their back or finding balance. So the way I introduce rein pressure or rein contact is I consider contact a touch. So just like my seat contact, my leg contact, or how I have to shift weight to keep my balance over gravity between my seat and legs, depending on how the horse moves, the reins are just an extension of that. Because without touching the reins at all, we really can't feel the shoulders, the front leg placement very clearly, or the details in the sort of alignment of the neck bones to the back and the hindquarters. So in other words, we can't help them straighten the axial skeleton without the use of the reins. So what I'm doing that people misunderstand a lot in some of these training videos is when I take a contact, I'm really trying to get a feel between basically from my shoulders through my arms, the weight of my arms, through the reins to the horse's whole front end. So it's a contact is just a touch, which means I'm not allowing the pressure of the reins to increase or decrease. So in order to keep the pressure on the reins or the contact the same with a horse that's unstable, needing to adjust their neck position a lot, what I have to do is constantly adjust the length of the reins. So with Lexi and Rafalco, they both had what I would consider very corrupted use of the neck because their back and hindquarters were so unstable. So they learned to balance on the bit, balance on the reins, or hold through the neck just to maintain stability because they lacked stability where they should have had it, under the saddle and through the hindquarters. So when I begin sort of restoring a rein contact with a horse, what I'm doing is just looking for a short enough rein length that I can feel the mouth, I can feel the bones of the neck, I can feel what's going on under the surface through my hands, but my fingers are very loose. I don't believe in closing the hands or pushing them down. What I have to do instead is stay stable enough in my body through my spine and pelvis, seat and legs, that I can constantly adjust the length of the reins in order to keep the feel the same. So in other words, if I want to turn her and I increase pressure on the left rein, that's an aid, right? If I want to turn her and I increase pressure on the right rein on purpose, that's an aid. If I shorten the reins and I don't ever allow her to lengthen the reins or lengthen her neck, then what I think is a rein contact turns into a rein aid. Right? And if the aid isn't effective at helping them shift weight off the forehand, lift the back, engage the hindquarters, then they avoid the pressure by contorting themselves in some way to get away from the pressure or the restriction of the reins. So a contact to me is a touch without restriction. And this is what it looks like, whether we're going left and right, working on our little circles. I'm constantly adapting the length of the rein in order to keep the same feel. So when her back and hindquarters get unstable or unbalanced, she's going to curl and shorten the neck. When the spine and pelvis become more stable, all horses lengthen the neck. So if I restrict the lengthening of the neck with my reins, I also create instability through the spine and pelvis, right? So I want to encourage her to lengthen the neck, but I want to prove to her I'm not going to restrict any movement of the neck lengthening or shortening, and I'm not going to restrict any movement of the neck going up or down. The only aid I believe in giving while I'm developing a rein contact is a little bit of resistance left or right so that she doesn't bend the neck, which is going to create a bend through her entire spine and a twist, and it's going to throw off the stability of the back and hindquarters. So this is often called rooting on the bit, right? It's considered rude, it's considered a bad habit, it's considered terrible. And I go, it's just part of their process of how they use the neck while they're learning to balance the torso, right? So the weight distribution has to happen through the torso before the neck can stabilize. Every time she curls the neck like that, she tells me her weight distribution is getting uneven left to right. When she lengthens the neck and roots or pulls down, that's also where her weight's going, down. If she elevates the long neck without any resistance on the reins, that tells me her body weight is shifting up and back. So the main difference between horses and humans is if we lose a little bit of stability or control over our weight through our torso, we do this. We stick our arms out. Horses can't do that with their front legs. So what they do instead is they use the neck like we use our arms. So they use the neck like an appendage, even though it's actually part of the axial skeleton, right? The spine goes all the way to the head. But when we restrict the head and neck, it's kind of the equivalent to strapping somebody's arms down and telling them, now find your balance. Might not work very well. So a rein contact starts to, because somebody in her past has confused a rein contact with a rein aid, she learned to contort her neck in order to escape the pressure. It never, ever helped her stabilize her back or hindquarters. That's what all of her rehab has been about. So I use the circle, trying to help her keep the back level, the neck straight, the hindquarters level, around a tight circle. And that's what starts to engage the hindquarters and lift the back. So it's the path of travel I'm riding that's doing the work. And while I'm riding that path of travel and using weight distribution through my body to guide her, I can start to just touch with the reins, restoring a contact that means she feels my hands, I feel her mouth, but there's zero restriction. There's zero impediment from how she wants to use the neck, other than I'm not going to let her really bend and twist it left and right. So whenever she increases pressure in my hands, I let the reins slide. When she decreases pressure in my hands, I shorten the reins. And instead of pulling the reins back to keep them short, I adjust the length while my arms are always forward, because it changes the direction of force that the horse feels in the mouth. So if I shorten my arms even a little bit on a loose rein, the direction she feels is towards me. So that's pulling, right? If I have very short reins, but the direction of my arms is forward, then I create a contact without restriction, no pulling, right? So she adjusts the use of her neck constantly, And that's why I wanted to show building a rein contact with a horse that still has her head and neck all over the place, which is just reflecting the lack of control she has over her own body weight through her torso and forelegs. That's all it shows us. So while she's developing more self-control over her body weight distribution, more stability through the back and hindquarters, her neck is going to be all over the place. But just touching it sometimes, teaching her that she can feel me through my arms and I can feel her through her neck. That's what a contact does. It's just a touch. But I'm not going to do what she's expecting me to do, which is increase the pressure on both reins or let her increase the pressure on both reins. So the way I teach this, to keep it really simple and it's really this precise, is I go, if 10 is really heavy and pulling and 1 is slack, loose reins, then I go, what's the feel of my seat against the saddle or my legs against the saddle or my feet in the stirrups? I would say those are definitely not a 0 or a 10, right? So I could call them a 5, somewhere in between, right? So then I want to find a rein length. And because she's overcurled her neck for years, it's a very strong habit, instead of making it a 5, which would match the feel of my seat and my legs, which would be ideal, I'm going to start with something between a 3 or a 4. I'm going to be pretty light in my rein contact, a little lighter than my seat and legs to start with. And I'm just going to keep adjusting the length of the reins in order to keep that feel that I'm calling a 3 or a 4. I think it's more on the side of 3 than 4. It's pretty light. And I want it to be light because I don't want to give her anything to lean on. That's a learned habit for her. And I don't want her to feel restricted in the least. So there, I give a little rein pressure on the right rein because she bent the neck to the left. I didn't really restrict it. I just used the opposite rein to ask her to keep her neck straight. This is her harder direction. So I'm just going to do a little bit this way, where she has more trouble really using the right hind leg. When we go the other direction, she has a tendency to fall forward and overload the left front leg. So her neck changes either way. It doesn't matter. Her speed changes from one direction to the other because she's not yet balanced herself left to right, so the direction makes a difference. Right? And you can see when she bends her neck like that, it throws her whole body out of balance. So I resist it, but I don't completely restrict it. I'm not holding her so tight that she can't bend her neck left or right. And I'm encouraging her to lengthen her neck by never restricting. As much rein as she wants to pull through my fingers, she can pull through my fingers. It's no big deal, right? And if the contact gets lighter than a 3, then I just reach forward, shorten the reins, and regain the same feel that I'm calling a 3. So with Lexi at this point, she's a great one to show this because she had sort of a corrupted relationship with the bit and the reins. It triggered her to curl her neck. And I have to kind of go back to the scene of the crime, so to speak, and reestablish the fact that through my hands and the reins, we can touch and connect without restriction. That to me is the tricky part of rein contact. And what really complicates it, which is why I leave it a little bit later in development. It's not the first thing I teach, and it's not the first thing I do with horses. I leave it a little bit later in the stages of development as the horses are trying to pull together the left-right balance and the front-back balance. That's when rein contact starts to be incredibly useful, because every weight shift that goes on to both front legs, she's going to lower that head, right? If the weight shifts left to right too much, one way or the other, she's going to shorten the neck muscles. If she drops the back, she's going to shorten the neck muscles. If she starts lifting the back, then that long neck and head is going to elevate spontaneously. I never have to pull it up with the reins, and I never have to restrict it from going lower. That is giving me, when I allow this freedom of the neck and just start to have a contact instead of an aid, how she chooses to use the neck really shows me moment by moment where her body weight distribution is, whether she's lifting the back, dropping the back, bending the spine, twisting the spine, right? Too much weight on the forehand or starting to get her balance front to back. So a contact with a horse that's still struggling with their balance is difficult because their neck is going to be moving a lot, right? And if I try to keep the reins the same length while the neck is moving, I automatically am giving a rein aid because I'm creating restriction and resistance. If I keep the same feel, no matter the length of rein, that to me is a contact, no restriction, right? So they start to feel our whole body, we start to feel their whole body by the time we can introduce a rein contact. And one of the reasons I leave it later in development for people is because the horse's neck acting like an appendage while their balance is changing means the neck moves a lot, and people instinctually love to grab with their hands and tighten their arms when they get unstable. So it's kind of a bad combination, this whole rein contact deal, because humans get very grabby like monkey paws, and horses' necks need to move. And therein lies a big problem with, why we all struggle to use the reins correctly. So with Lexi and Rafalco, reintroducing rein contact is going to take some time. So I just start on it while we're still using the small circles or the big circles to help change the use of the spine, the use of the pelvis, and all of that. So as we're balancing the torso through the strategy we're using that really doesn't require any rein resistance, other than left to right, I should say that, I can start working with her on trusting the feel of the rider's hands again, right? Because you can see, even with very little rein pressure, she's very quick to curl that neck. And so that's part of the reason we just eliminated the bit for a while, rode her in the halter, because it was just such a strong trigger for her. It was hard to work past it. Now she's starting to work past it. You can see where she gently takes the bit, takes the reins, and then where she wants to pull them through my hand, or she wants to get behind that feel of my hands, the feel of the reins. And so it's a work in progress. But she's much quieter in the mouth. She's much less bent through the neck. So we're making progress. And I'm just going to change direction really quick. Right? And her balance, what I'm feeling through the saddle, what I'm feeling through the movement, is coming and going. So it makes perfect sense to me that her neck is still changing position a lot. And this is something we have to describe, because from the outside, I just look like I'm giving away the reins or she's rooting on the bit. And the comments I get are usually like, hold your hands still, hold the rein length consistent, or take a rein contact, which usually means we pull the reins to us, which automatically creates a backwards force to the horse, and that's called pulling, even on a slack rein. So with Lexi, giving her little, like I just barely close my fingers on the left rein or the right rein if she pulls that way or that way. And all that's doing is saying you can get around a circle without bending your neck, which she used to do all the time as well. So she's learning she has to widen the legs in order to get around a circle instead of bending the neck. And the rein contact, so those little closing of my fingers you can barely see left to right, is just helping her keep her head and neck straight in line with my seat bones. But I'm creating zero restriction. If she wants to lengthen the neck and lower the head, she can have as much rein as she wants. If she shortens the neck, curls it, bends it, tucks her nose, then I just shorten the reins, but I don't increase the pressure on the reins. So this is very similar to what Rafalco was like. Same exact MO with the neck and the head use and the relationship with the bit and the reins. And so he's taken a little while to correct, but at this point he was actually doing a bit better, and I wanted to show the chaos of the process on a horse that's just starting to develop a rein contact. And that's what this looks like with Lexi. So I'll also show the same work with Rafalco, and depending on how his ride goes, we may trot or not trot, I'm not sure. But this was part of kind of preparing him and strengthening him for the trot and canter work, was at least at the walk, where he's starting to pull together the left, right, and the front back balance. It was time to change his old relationship with rein contact and start establishing a new rein contact, which he still goes in and out of, sometimes more dramatically than her, but recently it's been a lot less. So we'll see what that looks like today as well. Okay, thanks, Lexi.